Okay, take one. Here we go. Hi, I'm Dave. Got some notes here from the director, my wife, on stuff we'd like to cover. My wife Lisa, we've got sons Brandon, Brian, and AJ. Brandon and Brian are grown, so we've got one kid left in the nest. We have an unusual family. We don't stick to very good schedules. We like to work independently. We're all pretty creative and open-minded and stubborn and lazy. So I think those are all going to factor in, but I'm hoping that it turns into something really exciting. I work from home for about 10 months now, I think, for the first time in a very long time. And that kind of started the process. That's started us down the line of thinking of we could live someplace else. We don't have to be so close to a commute. That makes some flexible options. And that got us going down that road. And where we live is in the Seattle area, is one of those kind of impacted real estate markets where they recovered quickly from the crash, and it's very unaffordable to live here. Even with a good job like mine, where I like I said, I work from home. I work for a law firm. I'm primarily a database analyst. My work is kind of time sensitive, but mostly in a responsive fashion. So I think that's just worth noting, because it is the kind of work where I think the pressures of a regular day job are probably the least with this kind of work, because a lot of work is project based, and a lot of results take weeks or days to resolve. So there's not the same constant time sensitivity. So if you run into challenges, I'm hoping, on the road, as we have at home, it's a kind of a win-win. You know, I have a situation where my son cut his finger, and I gotta run him to the urgent care. I can kind of drop what I'm doing and doing that pretty easily, and there's a project that's a little behind schedule now, and I can jump in a Saturday or Sunday night or whenever and fill in the gap. So that's the employer's benefit on that side. You can cut all of this out. I'm taking way too long. I'm supposed to talk about our first thoughts on alternative living options. We're just living further away. And initially we talked about doing a travel trailer, getting just like a really bare bones one, even one that we had to remodel ourselves. I've got an old 1970 pickup truck that we could pull it somewhere, but we wouldn't travel in that. And that notion kind of seemed like, okay, that solves the problem of transitioning into a full-time RV, but it's not very exciting. And that became a major factor, which I think we'll talk about in the next section, deciding on an RV. The factors that we're weighing, and we've seen a lot of people talk about the factors that they weighed, or the RVs they've gone through after doing it for a long time, but we thought we'd start this very early, so we could look back at our own process and figure out, how the hell did we get here? So where we're at right now is actually getting a hopefully slightly used but fairly new Class C Sprinter platform, because there will be just the three of us. Our middle son, who's 28, is in nursing school. When our lease is up on this house, he'll be within a couple of weeks of finishing that and sitting for his RN exam. He's, of course, got to dive into that, and probably a different living situation anyway. So there's just going to be the three of us, the 16-year-old, well, he'll be 17 then, and myself and my wife. So Class C works out nicely because they've got that over the cab room. teenager is going to kind of have his own little pod. He's excited about that, putting sound in there and some sound deadening stuff, and just kind of having, even though it's going to be small, it's going to be his own kind of personal space, which is kind of exciting. So we've decided I've decided to lean towards the newer, really, and we may still go this direction, thought very hard about, an under $10,000 used one that we would pay cash for between student loan money and bonus, and scrape it together and just do it so that we don't have an expense. But I'm leaning away from that because even though there's the fear of spending a lot, the ones that we're looking at are 70 to 90,000, depending on how good of a just right amount of used you can get. The older one, it'd be nice to not have any payment at all. But then there's the worry of, is it going to break down? Do I know how to fix it? And where I'm leaning now, I'm just kind of testing this out as in the future I'll look back and hopefully say, yeah, this is a great way to start. I've watched a lot of videos on people teaching about slide outs and black water draining, and oh my God, it's just the whole process is a little daunting, especially for a computer geek. Hand me a server, I'll fix it for you. Your motorhome, I don't know. So I'm gonna have to learn a lot of stuff, which is exciting. I want to learn dealing with old vehicle mechanical failures on top of that. So I'm just going to be unrealistic about my learning curve, and also the emotional shift. We're in a 2,200 square foot 4-bedroom house now, and it's got at least a couple of large extra spaces that you could call a den that we've turned into a den. It's a massive amount of space, and most of it is full of stuff that we do not use. So we're paying way too much to store a bunch of stuff we don't even like. So our process now is the paring down. And our method for paring down is a rather simple one that my wife came up with a perfect word for it like a year ago, and we've since forgotten the word. So we keep using these approximations. Precious and beautiful, which sound a little bit kind of fluffy or whatever, but actually the most recent reference to that was my iMac that she's now using. Oh, this is just beautiful. It works. It's a little bit more expensive than the other computers we've got in the house, but it's really solid, really good. It's very nice for how we live, which is also leads into some of how we ended up in this area. If we're not asleep, we're probably, if I'm at work, I have my own office in the house, but if I'm not at work, most of us are sitting within maybe 10 square feet at my wife's desk watching something on her computer. It's just kind of our lifestyle. It's how we eat dinner. And she's actually moved around the house a number of times, and we're still collecting behind her. And so we've often looked across this huge house and thought, what are we doing with the rest of this anyway? We don't even like to be anywhere else in the house. So picture that set up in an RV, and we start to think, gee, we could have how we live, and we could also explore. And that kind of started when we were banting these ideas of what our options were. We talked to our middle son, who's in nursing school, and said, here's what we're thinking, how we'd start out. And he said, I'll find something. It's not going to work for him in nursing school, and you guys have weird schedules, and don't worry about it. That was kind of frustrating at first, because we were like, I thought we had this all worked out. We don't want to leave him in a rough situation, but he feels confident that it's all going to be fine on his end. And thinking about it for a few minutes, I came back out, and I went to my wife, and I said, might even been the next day, and said, we're going on an adventure. And that's how this started. I kind of rebrought the idea back. And I want to give Phil credit. I believe the first time anybody said, why don't we just do this full time, was my wife. So she gets credit for the seed. But the adventure idea was, let's just go all in. Let's get something nice, but otherwise be very frugal, and explore and have an experience, have days we don't forget. Most of the days we have now are so forgettable. we can't tell whether something happened a week or a month ago. We have a lot of challenges in our house, and a lot of them have to do with keeping a house. It's a lot of work, and everybody's got challenges with that, and it's it's this huge burden we're kind of carrying. So we're going to kind of throw all that away and choose freedom first. So with a really nice SUV, RV, it's a really, really nice SUV that you can sleep in. I feel like we will have that kind of owning that naive initial, hey, we're on a vacation, that people always warn against. And I think just by conscientiously going, okay, you know what, the first summer it's going to be a vacation. We're going to have a vacation. We're not going to be ridiculous, but we're going to let ourselves have that fun, and then kind of, as fall comes, sort of regroup and go, okay, let's sort of hunker down a little bit to day-to-day living like this. And the reasons behind going, I think adventure is a major one, but definitely the struggle of trying to live in an environment like this. I have what by all accounts would be a very successful career, but we're a one-income household, and we live in an area where companies like Amazon and Microsoft have at times hired 2,000 people a month each that are coming from elsewhere. So the influx has just been staggering. And the kind of work I do is very well paying, but doesn't change rapidly as a result of that kind of environment. So it just becomes harder and harder. We find ourselves spending most of our time and stressing some way or another over something that's lacking. When the rent skyrocketed, that came right out of our groceries. So now that's not as flexible. We can't quite always do the hot pockets. It becomes a challenge. So we're just kind of divorcing all of that stress and saying, what's left? So things like that iMac, the motorhome will be, it's a Mercedes-based thing. Don't care about that. It's just the quality. But also, mentally feeling like, we deserve to have something right. But paying for that by not having any of stuff that's not that level. So one really good pair of boots, one really nice jacket, the really nice ones though, not cheapy stuff, buy it for life kind of stuff. So we'll have to acquire those things over time, and that's going to be part of the joy of the adventure, is being able to have nice things again, because we're no longer burdened by a house. We don't have to get the on sale crappy computer. We can get the right one, not extravagant, just, hey, this is a good quality product, it's going to last a long time, it's going to serve my needs. Anyway, so that's kind of how we led to the RV, and I think as time goes on, we may want more of that kind of thing, or we may very well feel like we've adapted to this lifestyle very well, and we want to save even more money and trade down to something. Another factor that came in for those of you who are following along with going, yeah, I'm hearing you, but I'm leaning towards the used side. What I've run into is, for some reason, the Class C's, there's not a lot that are, at least that are not running, that are available at that kind of pay for it cash, score some stuff out of your 401k bonus kind of thing, price point. I don't know if it's because they're newer or what, but I would have gone more in that direction, but it's been hard to find what I'm looking for, especially because I don't like Fords, sorry. So that eliminates a lot. Chevys I'd go for, and I've seen some like mid-70s with that rust-colored carpet, and I loved it. I was like, this could be so kitsch. But I'm still scared of like, the motor mount's kind of rusty, and that I don't need to be dealing with that many problems. And that was part of the last question, was how we chose the class and size. And Class C primarily for the reason that most people do, which is just the flexibility of travel, being able to get in and out of smaller places, can almost go in a parking space. I feel like that's going to fit with our lifestyle better. What might have been the impetus for this was a vacation we took 9 years ago that was perfect in most ways, almost every way, where I had 3 weeks off of work and a decent amount of money to spare at the time. And we rented a car so that we didn't have to worry about ours breaking down. And we drove, on the first day we just drove south. We didn't have any other plans, just head south. That ended up putting 6,500 miles on a brand new rental car and taking us all the way down through LA, Arizona, Vegas, Montana, and back. And that was just the three of us, as the older boys were already grown and gone and didn't want to come play. But they'd gone on a prayer trip with us. And when we reflected on that trip, we were really impressed with the fact that we were able to find a hotel almost every night. There were like 2 nights where we found ourselves sleeping in the car in a parking lot. It was worth it. But when we thought about the trip, we were like, the only thing that would have made that more perfect would be if we weren't tied up with hotels. If we could just show up at my aunt's house and park in the street and be like, when they wake up in the morning, say hi, have some breakfast or something, hang around the area until that, somebody gets back from a thing Thursday. When you're coming to visit people, it's always kind of strained the time and everything, and it's always easier to see people that are retired than it is people our age that are working. It's I think it's just nicer for the visitor to just kind of hover around the area and not have any burden of trying to find a guest room and that kind of thing. So that's what I got there. So I need to do you the who, what, when, where, and why. Well, the who is us, our family. Lisa, Dave, and AJ. On a little motorhome. The what is a motorhome. Initially, the what is where the hell we're going to live next. So, mobile. A little worried about the fixed address thing. The where is all over. We're going to try to spiral. Again, trying to be conscientious of our naivete and inexperience. We know the roads and the towns and stuff, and there's lots of attractions in the Pacific Northwest that in 20 years we haven't had a lot of time to spend doing. In fact, we've been so burdened by the cost of living that gas money to go visit some of the places we love to go is out of the question. So it's really taken all the fun out of it. So we're going to start there and try to stay local, and if we have mechanical problems, we can work on those. Make sure kid in nursing school gets off to a good start, and we've got our land legs right. And then, kind of venture further out, kind of stay in the west, I think, initially. And then try to, kind of really go for it and do like a month or so long trip where we work our way back east and visit family and friends there. Slowly loop back. I think we'll kind of possibly try to hang around this area during the winter, depending on what we do. We may start looking at actually buying a house that's too small for us and fixing it up and flipping it basically, but also having that, feel that sort of having a home-based thing that some people have said, gee, I wish there was some kind of anchor point. Like, well, we could kind of have an anchor point that's no more than the cost of a lot rent, and it's an investment. It's also a place we could technically live if we had to. That just adds some security. I think that might be worth it. And on that point, the financials are something that some of you might want to consider, and it's a really tough choice. As soon as we can do it, we're going to try to trade our 2015 Jeep in on the motorhome. Like I said, I have a 70 pickup. That's not really a great vehicle for driving around all the time, but our Jeep payment's pushing about $500. I think motorhome is going to be anywhere from $600 to $800. So you can imagine if you take that car payment out of the picture, it really starts to free up a lot of things. And primarily, if I look at possibly trying to get a really good deal on one in January, February, nobody's selling them. They might sell them really cheaply. I can afford to get it earlier. Our lease isn't up until May 31st, and it's July now. So if we ditch the car, then paying a couple $100 extra a month to have that early and start transitioning is very affordable. There's also that concern over getting financing when you don't have an address, or trying to financing something that's too much for how much you're spending already. So by ditching the Jeep, that kind of smooths all of that over. And that's another factor. I mean, that $600-800 a month for an RV, a lot of people will say, well, really ideally if you're full-timing, no payment. But when we're looking at our budget, saving $600-800 a month is kind of small, I guess, all things considered. So that security is worth it. I think, as we get better at being frugal and doing stuff, maybe we'll back off of that, get a little more brave. When is going to be next summer, starting June 1st, 2020. And the why is really to bring the joy back in our lives. It's amazing how many parts of a family's life can be strained or even destroyed by lack of money. Especially, I think, and this might be a failure of perspective, where we are, not geographically, but because we're not poor. I don't have a difficult back-breaking blue-collar job anymore. Trust me, I've earned I've earned some scars. I have a lot of scars from doing that kind of work. Now I get paid to think. But when you're in that position where you're in a professional environment and you're making what to most of the country would be very good money, and living in a place where it's a struggle, it's doubly awkward, because you have to apologize for being poor and then follow it up with, no, I'm not going to qualify for any help. I'm not that kind of poor. That has had us using the space of this home to be as far away from each other as we can often. It's just a huge strain. It colors everything. When you ask for something, when you need something, when you desperately need something, and you've got to wait till payday or something like that for that, then suddenly everybody is interested in what everybody else's priorities are. It creates tension. And I feel that it is really not at all unlike that experiment they did on rats, where they would shock the cage they were in. And every time they shocked the cage, the rats would try to find a way out and start clawing. Pretty quickly they started to have anticipatory anxiety, and they would continue to try to claw their way out even when they weren't getting zapped because they were afraid it was going to come. But there became a point where they looked like, anyway, that they concluded it's not the cage, must be the other rat. And they went at each other. And we do that all the time. We're at each other all the time. And I know that it comes from that electric shock of, I still make within $1,000 a year of what I made 10 years ago in the hottest job market in the country, in the hottest profession in the last probably 50 years. That's the reality that I don't think a lot of people are really noticing. There's a lot of fight over minimum wage, and I don't get into politics, but that's a harsh reality. Obviously, rent and food and everything else have gone way, way, way up in that time. So that's difficult. So that's the why. The why is, instead of bitching about that problem, get up off our asses and do something to solve the problem. And the easiest way is to start with the most expensive thing, which is where you live, and the next most expensive thing, which is what you drive. Combine those two things, and suddenly buying a $90,000 Mercedes is the most frugal decision you could possibly make. Knock on wood. Anyway, that's our perspective right now. We're very naive about this process, but we've overcome a lot of challenges in our lives, so we're hopeful that this will be one of them. And here comes Carl the cat, just in time. Hey, baby. Hey, say hi, Carl. Hi, Carl. And we got to figure out him. He's got burrs in his fur, and he's very active, and he likes to hunt. That's going to be interesting to figure out how to keep him happy, who he's going to come with. We've also got a grandpuppy, Charlie, who may need to come with us if his dad, Brian, can't have him right away. And then our dog, Jada, who's quite old, so if she's still around, then we will find her a snuggie spot. I think she'll be fine, actually, though she doesn't really care about going out. So I think that's everybody. Wish us luck. Thanks.